Who? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the Navajo witchcraft, the dark practice beyond skinwalkers, and show videos about them. Even though I should not be talking about them in my Native American culture, but I'm going to anyway. I have my protection at all times. Anyway, skinwalkers, or Native American witches, or shamans that has fallen from grace of our God, the Great Spirit, perform secret rituals that should not been tempered with, should not been performed, should not be thought about, speak out loud. Because when you fall from the great grace of the Great Spirit, you fall into darkness. There is nothing there. It's blackness, evilness. But most people do venture into it. You become a skinwalker. You have to share. You bet you have to kill your whole entire family, your whole tribe, everybody you love, care about. Drink their blood, take on the skin of animals during a full blood moon. I'm not telling you what time to do it or anything, because I don't want to be in trouble with the Native American law or have Indians from the Native American Council come to my home and basically blacklist me. Basically, that's one of the main taboos. We have a bunch of Native American legends that are taboo we should not speak about, and that's one of them. And everything. And to be honest, hearing that's not the real name. I'm not saying the real name, because the real name gives them power, and then it gives them a way to locate you. So let's get to the video, shall we? Cool.
Us on the reservation. Oh. Welcome back to another episode of Sean Clint Shadow Productions. Now, before we get started, if you're enjoying this content here at Sean Clint Shadow Productions, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're new here, welcome. Sit down. Get ready to be scared. Oh, witchcraft, jealousy, hatred, and cheapness. On today's subject here, Sean Clint Shadow Productions, we're going to be talking about witchcraft on the Navajo reservation. Now, people like to kind of put skinwalkers and witchcraft in the same thing. No, talking about witchcraft by itself this time. Now, witchcraft by itself is something that's good. It's the same, like, skinwalkers know how to do witchcraft and stuff, and I would have to say maybe skinwalkers are a little bit more advanced than actual, like, witchcraft and witches on the reservation and stuff. And now, when I say witches and everything, I know a lot of people probably think, pointy hats and all this other stuff too. No. That's just kind of like the English term that I'm going to be using for this segment here for you all to understand. But when it comes to witchcraft on the reservation, it's always been there. It's always been something that has run rampant on the reservation and is still used today, unfortunately. It can be used for, going after somebody, witching them, getting them sick, trying to kill them, all these certain different things for cheap reasons. That's why I say it's kind of cheap, because most of the time whenever it comes down to somebody wanting to witch somebody, it comes down to jealousy, it comes down to a lot of hate. And kind of going back to my last video of people, if you haven't seen that, go check that one out. But that one, when I was talking about people growing up in toxic homes, people growing up with a mindset to where negativity like that kind of grows and festers inside of the mind. And when it comes to that, it grows so much that you get really petty. In a lot of these cases and ceremonies that I've gone to on the reservations, whenever we do like a ceremony, we try to figure out like what's going on with somebody, because sometimes it could be as little as somebody having bad luck. Certain occasions of events that happen in their life start to boil down, and it starts to become noticeable, because sometimes in life you're gonna have bumps in the road. But if it becomes an everyday thing more than once during the day, car breaks down, flat tire, things fall on you, you burn yourself, all sorts of different things, almost running into an animal on the road multiple times. Just thinking off the top of my head of certain cases that we had in the past. It comes down to that, and even sometimes I've mentioned on a couple of my other videos that I've done about during our ceremony stories, somebody like getting jealous of someone getting a promotion. So I wanted to dive deeper into the lore and the history of witches on the Navajo Nation. Now, can they be both male and female? Yes. A lot of times, whenever it comes to witchcraft in the reservations, it does come down to a lot of jealousy and hatred. And how do they do it? How do these people go and witch you, get you sick, or try to kill you? There's a lot of different ways. Whenever they try to witch or get somebody sick or anything, one of the first teachings I was always taught is yourself, items of yourself, of what you have, do not leave them out. Do not leave them, leave your car unlocked, or, even like leaving a hair tie somewhere, losing your jewelry, leaving stuff out for it to be stolen. That has your energy on it, that has your essence on it. It even comes down to hair. Somebody, I'm pretty sure all of you that have long hair out there, you brush out your hair, even people with short hair too. When you brush out your hair sometimes falls out. There's little pieces that come out. So if you're in a public place, like, a public bath or a pool or something like that, always make sure to try not to leave your hair kind of dangling about. Because for us in our culture, hair is an extension of our mind and our spirit. It holds our memories. It holds a lot of sacred teachings with it. And so that's why whenever somebody passes away, when you're in mourning, you cut your hair, because it's pretty much a renewal to kind of honor that person. And so, especially when we go on missions, whenever we go on investigations as well, I always have my hair braided like this. I always have my hair either braided or in a bun. I never have it loose, because who knows, there could be a dark demon there, and a dark spirit comes and they pluck some of my hair out, or they take some of it that fell on the ground, and come to find out later on that my mind and all these start having nightmares, start getting sick, because they gather these items that they have that is of you, and they put those, whether it could be talismans, or they could put those with bones, something that represents death. And they do their ceremony that tries to go ahead and try to bring that mishap upon you. Now, there's different types of ceremonies out there that you can do, and depending on the level of the evil person that's in this that you're interacting with, it can change. If it's somebody who's kind of newer, somebody who isn't of, I guess you could say that isn't 100% gifted, but they have evil intent. A lot of times when they do their ceremonies, they have to call upon evil spirits. It's kind of the backwards way of how good Hatathis kind of run their ceremonies. Lower level beginner Hatathis have to sing songs to be able to call upon spirits to aid them in their certain ceremonies. But if you are higher level, then you can go ahead and just pretty much perform the ceremonies yourself. Now, when it comes to evil, it's the same thing. But instead of calling a good spirit, you're calling a bad spirit. And depending on the song that you sing, there's a certain type of spirit that you call upon, whether that be somebody like that one story that I told you about of a ceremony story where they hired out a mercenary spirit to be able to go and actually kill and get rid of somebody. Now, there's also other ones that kind of give you bad karma, sickness. They don't want it to be kind of obvious of certain things, and it's pretty sad to see how much of that kind of goes around these days. Especially I'll tell you about this one time back in high school, on the reservations. I was on the basketball team, and I would always have to put ash on me before basketball games, eat some bitter herb, kind of bless myself to kind of make sure everything is kind of okay, and then I have a good, safe basketball game. Because when it comes to certain things like this, some of the other players, relatives, or family that you play against on the reservation could be evil. and they want to win so. This is what I'm talking about, is how petty it could be. They want to win so bad that they'll witch teammates on the other team, whether that be have them get an injury, have them miss a ball, all sorts of different things just to make sure that their team wins at a kids game, high school game, college game, elementary, city league. It really does come down to that of level of pettiness that you want to win so bad that you're willing to injure children like this. So I even remember one time there was during one of our basketball games that we had, there was a Hatashi medicine man that was there, straight up pointed out somebody evil in the crowd, and security came up and escorted that person out, all dressed, it looked like me, but they're all dressed up in black, and then they had like some stuff inside of their jackets, like some crow feathers, and then some other, like a crystal and stuff in there, because they had them take it off and stuff, and he's just like, he's not doing anything, and then the Hatashi came up, like showed his jacket, and he saw that stuff in there. They're like, get out of here, and chased them out. But even to this day, like it could come down to even your coworkers too. You get a most recent promotion at your job, and they didn't want you there because you're at risk of being fired now, or they wanted to be the person that's in charge. So they'll kind of go together, all their little groupies of jealous, petty people, and then they'll go to an evil medicine man and pray against you that you lose your job by any means. You could either, whether that be you lose your life, you get sick, so you miss so many more days. They mess with your mind to where you make a wrong decision that's bad for the company. Some stuff like that. It's very, very unfortunate that it's kind of down to that right there. Now, there's people that could do it themselves. Like I said, there's different levels and tiers. There's the first ones are the ones that have to call upon a different spirit to help them out. Now, there are those ones that are a little bit more advanced that could do it themselves, but it won't be too devastating. And then there's ones that can literally like give you like a heart attack if they wanted to. But then there's also, depends on you as a person. How much are you protected when it comes to these evil things? Because if you have, kind of like how I mentioned in my previous video, if you know yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, you already have a leg up on those ones that are pretty weak. If you add on tish, ash, and a bit of herb, or then like if you're out doing something, you're singing a protection song for yourself. If you carry an arrowhead with you, these are just some of the protections that we have in our tribe. So whatever faith that you have, could be a cross, could be feathers, or what have you, incense, oils, all these other protections and faiths and religions, medallions that you have. It really does give you a one-up on basic kind of witchery that happens in life. And kind of like if you guys remember that movie Drag Me to Hell, that one, my son and that grandma that was denied alone, I believe. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but she ended up cursing that lady to go to hell because she lost her home, which is pretty crazy. But some things like that, it kind of really reminded me of the reservation, of how it is. And even comes down to like me and personal stuff that I've seen and gone through ever since I've started this channel. Like whether that be people on the reservations kind of get jealous and they just want to spread hate. And it's just like, you don't even know me, bro. Why are you trying to spread hate on me? Then there's certain things that happen in my life that like it's kind of funny that you would see attempts of certain things that would kind of happen. Like just a couple days ago, there was a baby rattlesnake. I don't say baby, like a teenager maybe, probably around like this big. A rattlesnake was kind of going around and stuff, and I saw it. And then ended up chasing it away, and I was looking at it, and it was kind of coiled up right there, and I was just like, get out of here. I kind of got after it. I didn't want to kill it because it was just kind of like a little messenger kind of thing, but also could, if it wanted to kind of do some real damage to me. So I just yelled at it. I was just like, get out of here, and then he just kind of turned around and slivered off, and then I had a stake, and I was like kind of hitting it behind him. I didn't want to kill him, but I just chased him off. And certain things, like especially when the channel kind of first began, there used to be a lot of mutties and coyotes that used to show up. If you guys were there during the live streams, You know, my dogs outside would start barking and stuff, and then there would be some shorts. You can check them out in the channel too, of mutties and like kind of these things that will kind of come around and kind of bring warnings of people not liking what I'm doing, and that's pretty much exposing evil and exposing, trying to help people in their spiritual journeys for protection and knowledge, and that's stuff that a lot of people don't want to be shared out there because, you know, if fear is their biggest thing that they have, is their biggest weapon, and if you're not scared of them, you know, boot to the face, motherfucker. But it takes away a lot of their power that they have. And unless you're really, really powerful, that you don't need their fear or anything to be able to witch them, yeah, that's when you kind of got to call a Hatathli or medicine man to be able to get your life back in balance, get these certain things out. And even when I was a little kid too, before we started a lot of our journeys and our trainings and stuff, when I was really young, we used to go to medicinal people and stuff. And they used to tell us all these stories of people witching us and stuff. And we have these Hatathli's medicine people in our tribe that they said that they're suckers. And I remember one time I was witched, and I was a young boy, and he had like a wooden pipe that he put up. It was on my neck right here. Put that right there, and they say with their ceremony and their power, they're able to suck out evil things that are shot at you. And for people that don't really understand, it's kind of hard to explain, but when somebody witches you and shoots something at you, they can shoot bones in you. They can shoot like pottery and actual like body parts and all these other witchy stuff inside of your body. Now, when it comes to like this ceremony right here, this Hatathli, it's in a spiritual form inside of your body. So when he sucks it out, it becomes physical. And this one time, he sucked out a human finger out of me. And I was really young, and I freaked the fuck out. And he sucked that out of me, and then he spit it into the charcoal, and then the finger like went, when it hit it, the finger went, and then it curled up like that. And he was telling us that people were witching us and stuff. And it was over like jealous reasons, or like my family was doing good, family was doing this, you know. And then they came about and wanted to end us, to get rid of us. And so when it comes to stuff like that, that's why you always have to be ready and be careful when it comes to witchings and stuff like that. And the best way to combat it is positivity, walking around with a good heart, a good mind, having a song playing in your head, being happy, being joyful, and just, you know, you get used to it at first. At first it's kind of weird. At first, whenever you're trying to be okay and strong and know yourself and stuff, it takes a little practice, but after a little while, it becomes natural to where like you just kind of walk around. Like I mentioned in my last video, you kind of walk around with that shield and that bubble with you, to where normal stuff of the evil way doesn't really affect you in such a way. Now, am I saying that's going to work for everything? No, it's not. There are some things, like how I mentioned, if they are more powerful, they can go ahead and break through those defenses and fuck you up if they wanted to. So just be careful. And those are just some of the things that you kind of run into on the reservation. Now, a lot of questions is like, what do these people look like whenever you meet them in the reservations and stuff? They look like normal people, which is pretty crazy. They could be anybody, you know. It's like you walk around a flea market on the reservation, and you know, you say like you charge too much for say like your stuff you're selling, like your movies, your DVDs, or your pinions you're trying to sell. Somebody could get pissed off and try to witch you, you know. If you run a food stand and your fried bread came out a little bit doughy and undercooked, or it's a little bit cold, you know, somebody can witch you, you know. It's that petty and it's that sad. But I have noticed there has been a bit of a decline in people learning those ways. More so of it being people who have more so spiritual gifts, but they don't know it. And so when they have negative thoughts, when they have negative intentions for somebody, sometimes it manifests. And that's when it goes into a bad prayer for somebody. sometimes it can be a little bit more powerful than most. And so that's why when the DNA and the spiritual people always say, be careful of your thoughts, be careful of things you say, because those are in a sense prayers that you are sending to somebody. You know, this tongue, the thing that we have right here, this thing, I remember in this one story I was told, is in the creation stories, this your tongue was modeled after an arrowhead. Now, your tongue can be a protector, but it can also be a weapon. So you have to be careful of how you use your arrowhead. The words that you speak that come out of your mouth is very, very sacred. You know, we're the only beings, one of the only beings on this planet that can be able to speak, make songs, yell at people, say demeaning things, but also say beautiful things to be able to protect and do all these certain things. Now, how you choose to use your arrowhead is up to you. Also remember, there's a thing called karma that's out there. Karma is an actual spirit out there. So whenever you want, or you're ever feeling kind of weird, or kind of, you know, something is affecting you in such a way, remember that mirror technique. Remember that prayer I told you. You know, don't say, oh, so-and-so over here is witching me and doing this stuff. No, don't say that. Because those evil people and those evil things could be wearing a false mask right there. And you could be sending that prayer to somebody who's innocent. So, what you do, whatever I'm feeling, sometimes I even do this, a lot of times I do this myself, but whenever I'm feeling weird, I said, this isn't me. I do not understand where this energy is coming from. My mindset, my thoughts are not of my own. So you recognize the energies that's within it. You kind of put all that together. You kind of put it into like a ball like this. Sometimes you have jish and stuff like that, spiritual items that you use to kind of get rid of it. What I do is pray it in the north. For us, we pray in the north, we say pa 4 times. Pa, 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 pa. There's a spirit to the north that takes that negative energy that way like that. That takes that stuff, and pretty much the northern spirit handles it. And in that prayer I say, whoever sent this energy, send it back to whoever sent it. The spirits, DNA, and the creator will know who sent it, and they'll be able to send that energy back over there. So in a sense, karma coming back at you for doing dark things. So be careful of things you say, be careful of things you think about, you know, because you may not know how much spiritual power you have yourself. And so you could be doing real damage against somebody who is just having a bad day. And so just, you know, remember your thoughts, mind your heart, mind your words, because this arrowhead of a tongue can be used to hurt people if it really needs to. So when it comes down to witches and jealousy and stuff like that on the reservations, sometimes there are sacrifices and everything that's dealt with it and all that. I will tell you this one story, which is pretty hilarious. During one ceremony, we were helping a patient that was being witched, but the people that were witching him were not using tactics that were of Navajo culture, I guess you can say, but they were Navajo, which is very interesting. They were using witching techniques from a different culture, and this culture happened to be from overseas. So I won't say how this works, but during this ceremony we found that out. And this is why kind of growing your spiritual awareness and making connections with people is important, because these witches were more so from Norse mythology, and kind of going overseas that way, really old medicines like that, and they twisted it and used it in the bad way against us. And so when you make connections like that with spiritual people, even from across the seas, you can call upon those spirits and say, hey, we got some imposters over here that are using your religion, using your faith in a bad way. And they say, okay, we'll take care of it. And sure enough, not too long later, you know, it was interesting, because that guy says, I feel great, I feel amazing. We got word from those people. They're like, we took care of him. They weren't even doing it right. So this is one thing I want to be able to build that connection with everybody. Like learn different things, learn different ways of either combat or protection, because sometimes when you deal with something that's outside of your region of where you are, to be able to go against curses like that, it's almost like a knot, and you almost have to untangle it, but there's a certain passcode to be able to learn how to undo it. And only with that faith and religion do you know the keys to be able to undo that knot. So that's where learning different cultures and faiths and religions is important, because when you do that, you'll deal with something that's not of your land, and you have to call upon help to be able to assist them, and certain things that's like that. So it's pretty interesting to be able to have those connections of people that know these certain things. And so that's where you always have to be careful, of like, if you're learning something else, be sure to do it from the original people that teach it, so you get the full picture, full stories, reasons why, songs and ceremonies of all of that, of different faiths and religions. That's why I never talk bad about other faiths and religions, because at the core of it, there are spiritual teachings of those certain things at the very, very deep core of it. And so they have their own spirits, and they have their warriors, and they have their darkness too as well, everybody around the world. So building those relations, building those certain aspects in life is very, very good, very beneficial for you and them, because there's indigenous people all over the world now from the U.S. Sometimes they could be witchy, so if they need help over there, just like give us a call, and certain things like that. We'll be able to assist them. And that's how you bring everybody together. That's how you bring the world, instead of dividing everybody. Respect other people's faiths, respect other people's views on the world, and come together like that. That there are differences, and respect each other's space in this world that we have. Respect each other's cultures in that way. So in that way, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there for this story, just pretty much recapping on the whole thing. There's still Navajo witches out there in the world, so just be careful, and just not with Navajo people. There's also witches from different tribes, different races and religions and faiths all across Turtle Island and the world, and even in the spiritual world too. So be careful out there, everybody, and just like I always said, just know yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, and you'll have a one-up on a lot of these things here. So a couple of updates that I have for you on the channel. There's going to be a new episode dropping. This ring of how it was made, and a bracelet too from Kindle Billa. So if you guys out there in the world that's watching this right here, you would like some Diné Navajo, hope you're ready for some more Skinwalker tales. Oh. It's been a while since we've touched on this topic. Got my tobacco out for this one, and hope you're ready. Topic of Skinwalkers and Yanagloshis are one not lightly talked about, but here at Shanklan Shadow Productions, it's become pretty much a staple for the channel to be able to discuss and educate the folks out there of what Skinwalkers actually are. Now, I've gotten a lot of comments and questions about why would you even become a Skinwalker or Yanagloshi. Now, I've touched on this before in a couple of my past videos, but never really got into full detail about why somebody would want to become a Yanagloshi. And there are lots of reasons why somebody would want to jump in the skins. Now, for everybody out there that doesn't really understand or never really been in the res, or has friends in the res that kind of tell them stories about reservation life, for a lot of people out there that do not understand, you kind of have to look at the home of where somebody comes from that is part of Roshi. You have to think about who their mother, their father, their grandparents, uncles, aunties, cousins, relatives are. What kind of family relationship do they have? Unfortunately, on the reservations, there's a lot of corruption out there. Darkness. It's a hard subject to talk about. It's a hard subject to get into because you start dealing with alcoholism, you start dealing with drug abuse, you start dealing with domestic violence, verbal abuse, all sorts of different things, because you have to look at the history of our people, everything that we have gone through. Look at the brief history of indigenous peoples. We didn't get the right to be able to perform our ceremonies legally in the United States until the 1970s. Our people went through boarding schools. My grandparents, my mother was the last generation, at least in these parts, to go through kind of a militaristic boarding school setting, residential schools. And luckily, like me and my siblings, we didn't have to go through that harsh punishment that my grandmother, my mother, and even before that too, of schooling, of residential schools in the United States, and then even in Canada too. There's still very, very recent times of residential schools actually being opened. Residential schools of teaching us that our culture and our way of life is the way of the devil, the way of the demons. And when we speak our language, we're speaking the devil's tongue. We would be punished for speaking our language. We would be punished, and sometimes children were even killed at these locations. So you gotta think, a lot of those people that went through that are still alive today. The repercussions and the effects of going through that your way of life, being trained, is gonna lead you to damnation. When you go through such things, such traumas like that, you go through a lot of different things in those boarding schools. And there's a lot of abuse, physical and sometimes sexual abuses too. There are cases of that too in there. And so when you return home, a lot of times in the reservation life is hard. It is hard for a lot of the normal everyday people. Like, we don't have the most luxurious houses, we don't have the luxury. A lot of times families on the reservation don't have electricity, running water out there still to this day. There's still about 10,000 families out there in the reservation that don't have running water or electricity out there. It's kind of very, very hard to survive out there. You have to go haul water. The nearest grocery store could be like 45 minutes to an hour away. Same thing with the police. Same thing with, if you try to get a hold of the police, Navajo Nation police, if you've seen any of the documentaries on TV, they're very, very understaffed as far as for trying to keep law and order inside of the reservation. You have the effects of generational trauma from genocide, from everything we've been through. Different tribes have their tragedies and everything that they have gone through, the long walks, the wars, the battles, and being imprisoned on reservations. Up until the time when we were able to finally leave reservations. At one point, there were concentration camps for our people. So, people dealing with the loss, people dealing with certain things and being relocated to different places, it's hard. You go into alcoholism, you go into drug abuse, so you deal with so many different things because a lot of times you couldn't resort to going to ceremony to getting help because it was illegal. And so the nearest thing that you could try to do is just go into all these different things that weren't good for you. And that's one of the hardest things, is losing touch with who you are and where you come from. For a lot of people out there who ask questions about the indigenous faith, indigenous belief, it's a lot of connection with Mother Earth. It's a lot of connection with the spiritual people, the Indiana themselves. And when you lose touch with that, life gets very, very hard for you because it's hard to fit in. It's hard to go in with all this everyday life. So you try to find ways to cope. Sometimes you don't have people nearby that can help you out. There's not a lot of good. There's good influences out there. There's also a lot of bad influences out there, and a lot of times it does come from the home. To where you grow up with that toxicity being normal, that toxicity being a part of your life. Now, am I saying that every home on the reservation's like this? Hell no. but there are some cases out there that are like that. And it's not just our Navajo Nation that's going through this, or just indigenous people themselves. There's people from every race and religion and faith all across the world dealing with hardship just like this. And when it comes to vulnerabilities, not having anybody there to show you a way out, show you a way to guide you to get through certain things like this, a lot of times these families out here are stuck with that toxicity. A lot of times these families are, they have no way out of breaking that generational trauma, going through, getting away from that, because it's an everyday thing. I know a lot of people that have gone through this certain situation, and I always ask, like, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just go away? And then they're like, go where? I have no job, I have no money, I have no car. And jobs in the reservations are very few and in between. Work at the chapter house, you can go work at the grocery store, gas station, or you start going into the construction field. Or you have to do what I did and leave the reservation and find work. I was working in the solar industry. Industries that don't really work out or have a lot of jobs in the reservation up until recently. And it's very interesting to kind of think about the psychology of why somebody would want to turn to darkness and evil. Is because you're either born into it and that becomes normal in everyday life. And when you have bad influences, especially on the reservation, when you pick friends and you pick role models in your life that go down a dark path, it's kind of easier to follow with them because it's cool. It's a lot easier to go through certain things and follow certain people. So, A, you don't get bullied. 2, you don't get beat up, and then 3, you get to keep your life. And when you think about why does someone do evil, there are a lot of reasons why out there. People would go and want to go jump in the skin or do evil things. There's not just jump in the skins, but there's also evil witching that happens on the reservation. There's also different things that happen everywhere. But it all comes around to the unique situation that this person was put into to become a villain. It also comes down to a lot of human emotions, like why does somebody get mad? Why does somebody get upset? No one is born and wants to be mad. No one, I bet there's some cases out there that are like that. But for the normal person, no one likes to be mad. No one likes to be upset. And sometimes you get to the point to where being upset and mad makes you happy. It's kind of weird. But it's something that, like, whenever somebody's mad or upset, what's going on? Talk to me about it. Sometimes just needing to vent it out, help them find solutions is all it takes. Now, I'm going to share a story with you that I was told one day when, after we got to be able to see on a scouting mission, pretty much Yanagolshis running around in the middle of the night. We're watching them, and I turned to one of my relatives and I looked at him and I asked him, I was just like, why would somebody want to be something like this? We were sitting up on the hillside at night. It's a full moon out, and then we saw those people drive up from their cars and they go meet up at a certain spot. We heard about it, we got tipped off of the information. So we're scouting it out, we're looking, and we see them get dressed up, and then they start singing their songs, and then they begin the transformations into their animals, and they change into their skins and stuff, put on the body paint and all this stuff. We were there, and then they run off. And then when they were gone, we were getting ready to leave, and I turned to my relative and I asked him, I was like, why would somebody want to do this? After they left, you knew they were going to go do something mischievous. You knew they were going to go do something very bad. He said, I'm going to tell you a story about this young boy I met a long time ago. He grew up in a house to where his mother had passed away of an illness. It was a long time ago. And this boy had a father that was dealing with the loss of his wife. He was an only child. And in this story, he tells me that the father really went down a dark path of alcoholism. And the son was very, very young. The son was very innocent. He was kind of going through a lot of trauma too about losing his mom. And there really was no other relatives to kind of go and take care of him. So the father said that he'll take care of him. But in his grieving, the father used to beat the son out of anger. And a lot of times the father used to blame his son for his mother's death. He used to tell him, like, I wish she was here and you weren't. Very, very, very belittling, demeaning, soul-crushing words his father spoke to him. He went on through this for years and years and years. He would go to school and he would meet some guys that were they would bully him, do all these different things. And he ended up getting bullied so much, getting beat up, so many different things, that he would return home to his father and his father would get mad at him and then beat him. He's just like, why are you letting these kids beat you? I'll show you a real beating. And he started beating his son even more. So one day the son had enough. The son did not want to go through this hardship. He didn't want to do anything really anymore. So he ran away from his home. And when he ran away from his home, he was going to go to the cliffs and jump, take his own life, because he wanted to be with his mom. But when he was getting close to the cliffs, he was crying. And it was the middle of the night. He was walking through, going up the hill toward the canyons, until something came up to him. And he turned and looked, and it was a Yanagloshi with a big old smile on his face. He said, "What's wrong?" And the little boy, he wasn't scared. He's never seen a Yanagloshi before, and he was at a point mentally to where he didn't care what happened to him. So there was really no fear of what this person could do to him, because his father and those kids at school already pretty much did the worst that they could to him. He says, I'm going to go meet the Creator. I'm going to go meet my death. He said, why? And the boy told him everything. He said, oh,
you're seeking love. You're seeking family. You're seeking connection. People to look after you and protect you, right?
The boy was crying, shedding tears. He's like, yep, that's all I want. That's all I want is somebody to say they love me. So that Yanagloshi looked over at the canyon, looked back at the boy, said,
well, I'll give that to you, but at a price.
The boy said, what? What's the price?
He says, you can get your revenge on your father, and I'll help you.
He said, what do you mean? He asked the boy,
how bad do you want this? How bad do you want this connection? Because when you do this, you'll be a part of me and my family.
Then, sure enough, he pointed over to his left side, and there was eyes that started glowing into the trees.
These will be your brothers and sisters from now on. But a sacrifice has to be made. Your father is the only one that you have in your family left. His soul for your happiness.
And the boy didn't second guess it. Yanagloshi asked,
where do you live?
The boy pointed. And they went and they got rid of his father very brutally. And the Yanagloshi was hyping him up. He was.
Does that feel good? Do you feel great doing this?
And the boy said, yes. He's all like,
do you feel strong? Do you feel powerful?
He said, yes. So with the help of the Yanagloshi and that skinwalker, they were able to take out his father. And they took his body and did what they had to. And so that Yanagloshi took him to a cave and sat him down by a fire. And there was a couple other young kids that were there too. So you
guys will be you are my new children. I will teach you how to do this.
And so the boy felt that connection, felt that love. And when he felt that love, everything that they did, even though it was bad, to him, in his mind, he was taught that it was good. And so all this stuff that kind of went on over the years, like, he was one of those people that were kind of what we consider like those nomads or kind of Glani spirits that would kind of roam, never really had a home. So, but they would steal, they would eat local animals, and they would kind of go about like that. And when they would kind of get rid of targets, sometimes they'd take their monies or cars or stuff like that, and they would kind of live that lifestyle that's like that. Till one day, that boy ran into my relative, and that boy was sent to Gujingham, And for people who don't know, gaji means witch him, get him sick and kill him. He had a bounty out for him. And he was looking, he was watching, waiting for the moon to kind of go behind the clouds one night. And he was watching the relative play with his children at the time, playing with the dogs and being happy. And he was intrigued by this. He was intrigued by a different type of love and understanding. And so the boy was sitting there. Then the relative looked up over the hill and he sensed them. He knew that they were here. So he told the kids to kind of go inside and lock the doors. So the relative started walking up toward the hill, but he never got really too close. And then that boy was like, shoot, does he know I'm here? He was thinking that. And this relative knew a lot of different ceremonies, so he can be able to kind of sense what he was thinking. I guess you can say he was a type of Hatashi, medicine man. And then he says, yeah, I know you're there. The boy got shivers and he freaked out. And he said, what are you doing over here? And then the boy didn't say nothing. And then there was a couple other Yanagloshis that were kind of further away. They were listening too. And he started talking with him. He says, I sense a lot of damage to your soul, hardship in your soul. And I just want to let you know that I love you. And he got shivers down his spine. He says, everything that you have done, you can stop. He says, you can find a better life. You can find a better way. What you're doing is not good. You hurting people, you scaring people the way that you do is not good. The people that you hang around with are not good. You are somebody that deserves better in your life. That boy was kind of just sitting there as his voice echoed kind of throughout the valley. He had power with it. He had love with it, good intention with it. And that boy has never really felt anything like that in his life. So he was trying to comprehend what all this is up until when that boy kind of started thinking back on his life, thinking back on all these things. That man was telling him, he was like, this right here, this is what family is, our people. But this is what we walk in beauty with happiness and love. This is what being Diné really means. He's like, I'm pretty sure you never had anybody teach you that. Right as that little boy kind of, by this time he's probably like a teenager, but he started thinking and questioning his life. His master came and grabbed him by the neck, pushed him down into the ground, and hit him in his back a couple times. And he's like,
don't you ever think about leaving. Don't you ever think about abandoning your family.
And he grabs a knife, puts it up to his neck, and threatens him.
If you leave, this blade is waiting for you.
So that boy got scared. That boy had fear in him. So he was ordered to pull back, and that man said a prayer in Navajo for him. Said a prayer in Navajo for everybody that was there, all those Yanagloshis that were there. And he went back inside. And the thing is with this is that man, I guess you could say, had aura, but he had a lot of spiritual energy enough to where his presence alone was a shield that these Yanagloshis knew that they couldn't get to him because he was that powerful. So they ended up turning away and going back. And that boy was sitting there, all his brothers and sisters and his father, and he was looking, and they were planning and scheming and all these different things and all the deeds that he's done in his life up until that point, until one morning, early in the morning when the sun came up, he ran away. He turned and never returned back, and he ran from those people. And he got his skin and he hung it up. He was done, and he walked off. That relative told me that story because that boy, years later, found him, shook his hand, told him, thank you for what you did for me. The man was like, who is this boy? I don't understand who this was. And he's just like, oh, yeah. And then, but it didn't click for him until a little while later, thought about who that boy was. And the energy he felt from his hand kind of was sadness, but it was kind of the sadness of redemption. And that boy wasn't wearing the skin at night, and he was one of the people again. He was going back on that holy road. And so he told me that story. He's like, when it comes to evil, when it comes to corrupted people, there is a chance for them to turn back and not want to do evil things no more. There's always room for redemption. There's always room to kind of go back. Like he told me, he was just like, it'll be a hard road, but kind of got to go into hiding after you get these skins learn from them and their techniques, everything. So, but this story was one of those stories that really hit me hard, made me look at darkness and evil that's out there. Is because when you think about these certain stories that are like this, about people who are born into unfortunate situations, not even just born, but life happens and hardship happens, and the surrounding and everything they have around you, sometimes you have no choice but to kind of go through it, and how you go through it is up to you. And unfortunately, the cards that this person was dealt was ones that led him down that dark path. But am I saying that this is a situation for every skinwalker out there? No, it's not. Some people are just evil. There's people that are just like willing to be like, yeah, like, I want to go ahead and jump in the skins. I want to go fuck with some people because they're jealous people. In their minds, they're taught to be jealous. Somebody's doing better than you, I'm gonna witch you, or I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna do all these different things, and that's just not that's like a trait that's like not even just like with Navajo Nation or anything like that. And then when people will comment and ask me, why does people want to be skinwalkers? Why would they do such evil things? I'm just like, why does evil do evil? Now, skinwalkers and Navajo Nation aren't the only things in the world that do evil things. You have serial killers, you have all these other murderers, school shooters, all these other different things out there in the world. And it's not even just those people that commit murder. It's like people that lie, that betray, backstab, business people, all these other different things out there that try to win with an evil mindset, and they love it. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's a certain chemical drive, like that they're addicted to doing evil things, mischievous things in their own way and in their own life. They got used to it, and they certainly learned to love it. So when it comes to why would they want to go and do these things, well, that's a scenario of why it could be. Two scenarios, like somebody just grew up that way and they got used to that toxicity. They wanted family, they wanted love, but it's the wrong kind of love, and the evil and darkness will manipulate you in such a way. So with these things that happen, it's very unfortunate. You got to pray for these things, but sometimes things and spirits and people are just born evil. Some people just want to watch the world fucking burn. It's crazy to be able to meet people like that. And when you're at the edge, on their edge of their sword, what are you gonna do about it? Because no matter what words you say, it's not gonna help them whatsoever. Because they will take your life, they will take your soul, and they will fucking eat it. It's crazy to be able to meet people like that. And when you ask why, there's a lot of reasons why. A lot of things that could be the reason why. But all you can do, defend yourself, defend your loved ones, pray for your enemies. Pray that they go good. Pray that they find a good life again. Pray that the Creator can give them blessings again. Have that shield of knowing yourself so much that nothing can corrupt you. Even evil comes at you and they see you. You're such a pure heart and mind and intent that they look at you and they're not even going to try. Try to live that way. That's why I always say in my videos, know yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically. Have good memories, have good songs in your head, good prayers, happy memories of laughter, of smiling, but also of the hardship and the loss that gives you strength in your everyday life. That's something that you have to really kind of think about when you walk your everyday life. If you walk like that, darkness and evil can't touch you. No, I'm not going to say 100%. Yeah, those powerful beings still can get you, but still be careful. But still, it gives you a one-up on a lot of different things, darkness and evil in life. So that's a little story I wanted to share about why somebody would want to become a Boshi like that. Why somebody would want to kind of turn into darkness. And not at face value. You gotta know and see the whole picture for people itself, humanity itself, emotions itself, spiritually itself, all these different things, so many different factors when it comes to it. So I want to leave you with that little bit of information, a little bit of teaching I gave you at the end of there, that last little bit right there. Always walk with prayer, always walk in beauty. Keho. And so, as that story wraps up, I got a couple of updates for you. There's going to be a new episode coming up on the Shankland Shadow Lodge. This ring and this bracelet was made by Kindle Billa. So that's going to be coming up on the Shankland Shadow Lodge. Silversmith rings, ring and a bracelet, so with turquoise. So stay tuned for that. I have a Twitch. Oh, not hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shankland Shadow Productions. Now I'm going to be giving you another tale of Yanagloshis and Skinwalkers here, but I'm going to be taking you back to when I was real small, real chubby, and real innocent, just kind of scared of everything. But also, I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit more answers to some of the questions I've been seeing in the comments since the last time I did a Yanagloshi and Skinwalker video. So, here we go. Let's do this. So this story comes from when I was a very, very young child. And to kind of give a little bit of background and a little bit more knowledge on the Yanagloshi or the Skinwalker, those guys are notorious for going against people and going against ceremonies and happy times, I guess you can say, within the tribe. So whenever you would be having like a blessing way ceremony or, kinanta or, just squaw dance or anything like that, to where you're trying to perform a happy ceremony, a cleansing ceremony, a beautiful ceremony. In those ways, there's always like those stories of evil trying to come around and everything. There's stories of those darker things that would come and that would try to ruin whatever is happening or whatever is being conducted inside of the home, whether that be the Hawan, that be the actual home itself, outside, or what have you. And so with this one right here, this is going to go back to a long time ago when we used to go to a lot of peyote ceremonies and everything. So when I was very young, my mother used to always take us to a lot of peyote ceremonies, NEC ceremonies. And so when we used to go to these things, I was very, very young at the time. So, trying to stay up for the ceremony all night to be able to be a part of it was kind of a little bit harder. So I remember I went in there with my mother, my brother, and a couple of my other relatives that were there as well. And so for those of you who don't really know, this is where a ceremony, whenever a patient needs blessings or something tragic happened, and there's a lot of balance that needs to come together, and the community comes together to be able to pray for that person, whether that be somebody passed away or somebody's sick, someone's not doing well in their life, so they perform a ceremony. There's a lot more to it. I'm just kind of giving you like the little broad, I guess you could say, summary of what the ceremony is. So in the ceremony, you, in a sense, you stay up all night and you pray, you sing songs and everything. It's a really, really beautiful ceremony. So I used to always fall asleep and everything, but along the teepee, around the sides and everything, there's these little kind of gaps that were kind of spread around the teepee where you would drive in the metal posts to be able to hold in the teepee canvas and the poles and everything. So when I was sleeping one night, I remember they were passing the medicine around. We were all eating it and everything. And so after I partook of the medicine and everything, I ended up falling back asleep. And I turned away from the fire because it was a little warm, a little hot. So I had my back to the fire. So I had my face right along one of those cracks inside of the canvas right there. And I remember I was sleeping, and when they were started singing and everything, I remember just like being curious, and something just woke me up. I opened my eyes and I look out underneath over there, and there was two feet that were kind of off in the distance. I would have to say about 20-30 yards away. And I was just like kind of looking. I was like, oh, it must be one of our relatives and everything. It must be somebody outside, because sometimes people don't go inside. There's other people that are outside preparing food and all that other stuff. And so this would have to have been like after midnight. So this was early morning, before the morning dawn actually kind of came up and everything. But when I was very young, I guess you can say I was really sensitive to a lot of things too. And I kind of had like a weird off feeling, because like I was sitting there and I was looking, and it didn't move. whoever that person was that was standing there didn't move at all. And then I was kind of looking, and my eyes kind of adjusted like a little bit, and it was more so the moonlight was shining that night, so you can kind of see a little bit more of what was actually there. And I remember seeing just two, bare feet that were kind of just standing right there. And I was just like, who's walking around barefoot? They're gonna get stickers in their feet or something like that. And so, not too long after, like I was looking, and then like I kind of looked up at my mom, and I wanted to tell her and everything, but when I looked up at my mom, I looked back, it was gone. And I was just like, what the heck was that? And I was just like, kind of, my mind and my thoughts started racing a little bit more, I guess you could say. So not too long after, I was just like, I kind of tugged at my mom, and I told her, I was like, hey, I think somebody's outside. And she was like, oh, it's probably somebody out there and everything. It's probably one of the family members or relatives. And I was just like, okay. So I ended up going back to sleep. And then I woke up again not too long after, because when they were drumming, when they were singing, after one round and everything, they stopped. And I was just like, okay, I wake up, because it's just like, that's more so like my lullaby and everything. So I was just like, I woke up from my sleep, and I was just like, what's going on? And then I hear kind of whispers, and I kind of hear, people talking, and I was just like, what's going on? And so then not too long after, that's when you hear everyone kind of started talking. And then now that I know that they were I'm a little bit older, I understand more of the language. They were talking about, there's a witch outside. They said there's a Yanagloshi outside. When they realized it was of the darker entities that were kind of around, I remember the medicine man told them to continue singing, told them to continue praying. And I remember he gets up, and then he puts some medicine onto the fire and everything, puts some cedar down, and he starts praying and everything. And so he says, don't be scared, everybody. This ceremony right here that we're running is going to protect us. This ceremony that's right here is going to protect all our loved ones that are around and everything. So when it comes to this stuff, this is what I was mentioning about how the Yanagloshi and everything, the skinwalkers, they come around to try to disrupt it. They try to make everybody scared. They try to, do all these different things. And, it's one of those things to put fear in people, to put doubt in their mind whenever they're doing these ceremonies. And so when they do that, in a sense, when you run these ceremonies, your heart, your mind, your spirit all has to be focused on what you're praying for. And so that was one of those things that came to disrupt that. So as they continued singing, the medicine man ended up going outside, and he started singing some songs too. And I remember I was awake, I was kind of looking around and everything. My mom was holding me close and all that. And so he went outside and started singing, doing his songs outside, and he blew his whistle 4 times outside. And now when I say whistle, it's not the same as the Yanagloshi whistles that they use and all that. It's more so of a holy whistle that they blow during these ceremonies and everything. So when he blew that, it was very interesting, because I got chills. I got chills throughout my whole body when I felt that. And then it seems like that literally, it felt like, if you've ever been blessed or anything like that by some of our traditional regalia, like feathers or anything, or fans, they bless you, and then they say when they bless you with those fans, they kind of gather up that darkness and that evil, and then they kind of shoot it to the north. They say pa 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 and everything. And so I had that feeling when he blew the whistle, the sound frequency of it went throughout my whole body. And my fear that I had, and I had to tell you guys, when I was a little kid, I was very, very scared of everything. And when he blew that whistle, I felt the chills throughout my whole body. And they say that when you feel that, it's getting rid of that evil that's inside, or that fear that's inside. It gets rid of all that doubt. And, I remember those guys inside of the ceremony sang hard, and it was beautiful. It was, they sang some warrior songs in there and everything. And it was very, very, very awesome to be able to have everybody in unison sing those songs together, to go against evil like that. And, and then the medicine man ended up coming back in. They started going around some more, singing some more songs and everything. And it was, I have to say, I was like, that's like one of the first times I ever saw or witnessed, more so of a spiritual battle on a peaceful side of it. And, that's how, our people go against evil like that, is through our prayer. They go against evil through our songs. They go against evil with our traditional, I would call our jish and our sacred herbs like that, So that's like the old way of how they used to do it and everything. And so like medicinal people and everything, they sing those protection songs, they sing those mountain songs and everything to be able to protect yourself from these things. And so that's how, they were able to drive that thing off, was with love and happiness, with that intent of, unified happiness. And just, it was so amazing to be able to witness that as a young child. And it really brought a lot of pride within me for my people, and it brought a lot of pride within me of the strength that we have and showing no fear. I remember seeing all my uncles and grandpas and everybody, they're just ready, they were just like, all right, let's do this. They started singing their songs. I was like, God, man, that's so awesome to be able to see that and everything. And so, that was like one of those things, is just like certain paranormal things like that would happen during ceremonies like that when I was growing up. You would see a lot of good things, and you would see sometimes bad things too, but they would never in any of the ceremonies when I grew up were they ever penetrated like that to where they kind of came in, unless we're talking about getting rid of those things in the house. But that's a whole nother story for another time and everything. But to address some of the questions that people had about Yanagloshis and skinwalkers, one of the more common questions that I get is there any hope for these guys to be able to have redemption? Is there any stories of these beings finding peace again, finding happiness again? And I can tell you, yes. A lot of times, more so in recent times when I used to go back to the reservation and everything, it's pretty interesting because we would be driving around, and sometimes we would be going around the reservation sometimes. I remember we were driving along the highway going to Second Mesa, and along one of those fence posts, it was like a little barbed wire fence that was along the highway and everything. You saw a skin hung over the fence right there. And I was just like, I remember driving by, I was just like, is that a skin right there? Is that like a animal pelt right there? And it was just kind of just flowing in the wind right there. So we ended up pulling over and checking it out, and sure enough it was. It had all those signs, it had all those things on there. And from what I was told at that point was there is an option for these beings and these people to find happiness, to be able to find their way back to the Creator, to find their way back to the traditional ways, and to be able to leave that life behind. There were some times too that we would encounter some Yanagloshis and everything during our ceremonies and stuff later on in life. And you would whenever you're kind of dealing with these beings, whenever you kind of see them around, there's sometimes that you would create a connection, I guess you can say, with these people, because they would have a heart, they would have a soul. And a lot of times, very rarely did these guys ever kind of come up and do combat with us ever back in the day. They would always kind of be like off in the distance. They would always kind of be just looking at you or just trying to witch you from afar. That's kind of more so their tactics. They're not more so an upfront fighters or anything like that. So whenever we would just kind of be sitting out on the reservation at my great grandma's house, we would be sitting out there. I'd be with my uncle too sometimes, and other places on the reservation too. We'd be outside just having a talk, and we would just kind of feel that sense that something's over on the hill. And so we kind of just look over in that direction, and sure enough, you start seeing those red flickers up along the hillside right there. And then I was just like, are they here? And he's like, oh, yep, they're here. And so they wouldn't come up to us. We would have our protections and everything, and a lot of times their things didn't really work on us. So it's just like, we were tired. We didn't want to go running after them and chasing after them and all that, because that was one of those things. It's like you chase after them, they're going to go back even further, but then like you move back this way, then they move up again, and it's just like it's annoying, and we didn't want to do that. We kind of learned how their tactics are and everything with that. So we would just talk with them. We would just have conversations with them. They would never really answer back or anything like that, but we would sense their humanity. We would sense their human spirits inside of them, and we would have those conversations of being like, "What are you doing? It's." It's freaking cold outside, I bet you that skin isn't keeping you warm, Why aren't you with your mom? Why aren't you with your dad? Why aren't you with your grandparents? They're home worried about you, or your brother or your sister or a relative out there that cares about you, loves you, it doesn't want you to be here. And, it's just like you're out here checking on us, witching on random people that don't even deserve it, just to kind of have fun and all that stuff. So we would have conversations like that, and it was interesting because like I would feel sometimes that doubt of what they were doing. So hopefully, all those nights that we would talk to those things out there, hopefully some of those Yanagloshis out there, actually turned in their skins and went away. And I know it's probably not that easy to leave, the Yanagloshi people. They probably had to move off the res or get a bunch of protection ceremonies. There are stories of like, okay, you want to leave, well, you're gonna die. You can't leave here. You have a debt that needs to be paid to this evil being because you used our power and stuff like that. So that'll probably go into another story and everything. But with that, it's I always have hope that Yenagloshis out there, the people that do bad, people that do evil, I pray for these people that, they come back to the light, they come back to the holy ways of living a normal life and living a normal human life and everything. So when it comes to that stuff, you always got to pray for them. Pray for your enemies like that. Kill them with kindness. Kill them with love like that. And so, because there's always hope, there's always a new beginning, there's always new opportunity to change your life around. So that was one of the major questions. Another one of the major questions I used to always get is, why do these things do what they do? Why would somebody want to go and kill their own family member? Why would somebody want to go and, jump in the skin and witch people and stuff like that? You have to understand, there's people out there that just want to watch the world burn. I always like to quote Batman on that one, but it's very true. There's a lot of people out there that are dealt a very, very bad hand in life. There's a lot of people all over the place that have like family members who deal with alcoholism, drug abuse, violence, domestic violence, all those different things that they grow up on. It's very, very broken households. A lot of people who grew up as orphans, a lot of people that grow up, they start drinking, they start doing drugs and all these other things. They get with the bad crowd. And, from what I've seen, it's just like sometimes people long for that friendship. They long for that bond. They long for that love. And sometimes evil will come along and say, I will give you this love. I will give you the family. I will give you these things. You can join us and we'll go ahead and give that for you. A lot of times, when these people are dealt with a bad hand, they kind of curse, the good in life, the good spirits, all these other different things. It's just like, I've been praying, why doesn't these things happen for me? Why am I still in this situation? Why does this happen to me? And so they resort to evil, because evil can give them a solution, but it's only a temporary solution that leads them down an even darker, worse path. So that's one of those things, just like, what are the reasonings why these things do what they do? Who knows? Could be a lot of different reasons why they do what they do. It's pretty funny because we always joke around on the reservation. It's just like, dang, you get a new truck, dang, you get a new house, really nice, turquoise jewelry or something like that. You better watch out. Somebody's going to get jealous and want to witch you and everything. So it's one of those things. It's just like, those are some of the major questions I used to always get still get in my skinwalker videos and everything. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. That's a little tale of when I was a little bit younger and we got to see our family ceremonies go against evil at a very, very young age. So some channel updates that we have right here. So my meetup that I have, Meeting of Shadows at OC Paracon, ticket sales are going to be closing here in a couple weeks. So if you guys want to see me in California live, you get to tell some more creepy stories like this in person with a fire. Really cool. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sean Clin's Shadow Productions. Now, I'm here to give you more stories of the Yanagloshi. I know, you're not supposed to talk about it, but you guys want more, and I'm here to give you more. I have lots of stories of my interactions in my time with my brother, the guardian of the Navajo Nation, looking and going after these dark entities. Now this one's going to be very, very, very creepy. So this story begins out with a phone call. This was during a time when my brother and I would travel around to the Navajo Nation when people were dealing with a lot of darker entities in the Navajo Nation. So this phone call was somebody that was requesting help. They apparently had an elder that passed away, and they had a shack where they used to keep their belongings. And they would feel dark energies, they would feel evil things inside of there, but they never went in there just for that fear of those things being inside of there. And so they would try to get normal medicine men that would do the beauty way, Hojonja ceremonies. And they said that what was ever in there, they can't go and deal with that because that's not their speciality. You know, it was too dark. They were too afraid to kind of go in there. So they heard of my brother. They gave my brother a call and they said, "Can you deal with this?" And we said, "Yes, we can." So myself, my brother, and my uncle, we traveled over to Coppermine, Arizona, and this is where this story takes place. And with this, there were some other things that were kind of odd about the location. So when you go and do a run ceremony, whenever you go out to these locations to kind of go against darkness, you always have to look at your surroundings. What's around you? What could be the cause of these darker entities coming around? And what was very interesting about this location was the cliff sides, the mountain sides that were not too far away. I would have to say about a couple miles north of there. There was a little mesa canyon cliffside that was right there. So during the day, we went out toward that way, and the homeowners of that location said they grew up with a lot of Yanagloshis or skinwalkers in the area. They would always kind of be up in that cliffside over there. We're just like, I wonder what's over there. So during the day, we traveled over there, and what we've come to find out is there are certain locations on the Navajo Nation, certain canyons you can go to, where you're given a choice on your path of becoming a holy person, a medicinal person. You go to these canyons. If you go one direction, you learn the good way. You learn the good medicine and songs and ceremonies. Or if you go the other way, you learn evil, you learn darkness, and you learn how to do those evil things. Sure enough, that canyon side that's right there is one of those places. So, with us knowing who we are head to toe from our ancestry, all 13 directions around us, we were able to, and the teachings that we learned, we were able to go through the dark side to see if anything recently was there, any recent things that have happened during that time. And this is where it gets kind of creepy, because I've always heard stories about what happens in those dark tunnels, or dark canyons, I should say. And when we were walking through there, man, it was just like a blanket of darkness. It was midday, but you could just feel the draining energy of your good thoughts, your good memories just kind of seep out of your body into the rock face itself. And when you're walking through there, we were able to see at the very end kind of like a little dome area where the water carved out a perfect circular cave. And in there were bones. There were cattle bones, horse bones, and sheep bones, and I'd have to say, but I think unfortunately there were human bones inside of there as well. So we're just like, okay, so there are human remains in here too. So with that, we saw some markings and some other distinct things that I'm not going to go into, unfortunately, but you could tell it was active. So this was one of those places where the Yanagloshis would do their initiations into becoming a skinwalker and doing their ceremonies, what they need to do. So we're just like, okay, our patient is just a mile south of here, which would understandably make him an easy target. So we returned back to the home, and we're just like, we're going to wait for nightfall to be able to go into that shack and see what's going on. And so nightfall comes, we get ready, we get our weapons, we get everything ready, because with that being so close, that would mean that if we start to disturb with any evil or darkness that's there, some things they may not want us to see. They may want to keep secret. There's a reason why there's, I guess you can say, a barrier over that little shack. They might be protecting something in there. And this would have been when I was 16, 17 years old, so a couple years after the Skinwalker Tunnel incident, you haven't seen that, I got that video. I'll put it right here as well. Go check that out. That's going to be my first time seeing skinwalker tunnels. But going back to the story, I was very young still, very, very kind of immature. So we went to the shack. It would have to have been like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Sun was already down, and there were clouds over us. So we couldn't see the moon, we couldn't see the stars. It was just dark. So we pull up our vehicles in front of the shack and we turn on our headlights and we look in there. And my brother and my uncle, they came up to me and they told me, wait outside. Because you're still young, because you're not as experienced as us in this, whatever could be in there could get you sick. So just wait until you get your trainings up a little bit more, then you'll be able to go inside of these things. And so I said, okay. I didn't argue, I understood what dangers lay inside. So I waited outside and they said, make sure nothing comes running in at us from behind us to try to stop us from what we're doing. So I remember I was standing there, and what was a disadvantage to me was because the vehicles all had their headlights on me, so I couldn't really see past that. So if something were to come running out at me, then a Yanagloshi would come running at me. I would only have a split second to be able to respond, to be able to stop it from going in there. And that made me tense. I would have to say it was around summertime, so it wasn't cold, but I remember just gripping my sword tightly to make sure that nothing was able to make its way to them. They relied on me. They put their trust in me to be able to stop whatever goes in there. And so my brother told me what happened afterwards, what they did inside there. So this is what happened. So they opened the door to the shack, and inside were 3 chests. And if you can imagine, these chests were, I would have to say, very vintage in their look. All 3 of them were stacked up. And when they opened that door, there was a kind of a rotten smell to the whole place, the smell of death. So when they opened that door, they went to the chest above and they were like, okay, the contents of the evil items should be inside these chests. So they get the first chest and they open it up, and there's just a bunch of clothes, little knickknacks here and there, nothing too evil, nothing too dark. And so they grab that chest, they move it out of the way, and they make their way to the second chest. And me standing outside, I can kind of hear them. They're like, okay, nothing's in here. Let's open up the second one. So when they opened up the second one, that's when it got scary. Was because when they opened up that second chest, you heard a woman scream. And what's wild about it is the only contents inside of that chest were 4 stones, 4 sacred stones, and a piece of bone, and a picture as well. So inside of that chest, those stones are very sacred to our tribe, but also including a bone inside of there represents a darkness of the twisted representation of our holy stones and our holy objects. And with that picture that was inside of there was a picture of a woman inside of that as well. So we were thinking that, like, dang, was her spirit kept in that box this whole time? Was she trying to find her way out? So my brother and my uncle, they used buckhide gloves, and they grabbed the items and they put it inside of a bag. So they said, okay, so let's go ahead and move to the last chest. So when they made their way to the last chest, I remember hearing a gasp from my uncle and my brother, and they're like, what is that? What is that? And I could just feel, out in the darkness, I could feel eyes looking at me. You could see or feel, people looking at you. And I was just like, this isn't good. So I told them, I was like, hey, there's people out here. Just be ready. They said, okay. So what was inside that last chest was the regalia of a Yanagloshi. They gathered up the regalia and they took it back to the home, outside of the home. Never bring evil things in your home. They took it outside of the home and they started a fire. And this is when my brother showed me the regalia. He showed me the buck-hide skin rolled out, and he flipped it over, and on the inside of the skin were markings. There was blood markings, ash markings, and burn marks inside of there that represent a lot of the skinwalker signage, language, and symbols that they use to be able to shapeshift into these evil things. And also attached with those things were 2 pairs of antlers. And on these antlers was very interesting because they had blood. There was 4 blood drops on there. And each of those blood drops on the antlers represents somebody that you've killed. So this person, in their time of being a skinwalker, had killed 4 people. And I remember just being near that regalia, I had to vomit. I had to throw up because it was just so, had a weird smell to it, and just the energy off of it was very disorienting. So my brother said, okay, need to start a fire. What we need to do is we are going to burn these items and these things, and the ceremony that we're going to be doing is calling upon the spirit of the buck that was killed. And unfortunately, when you kill something for evil like that, the buck has its sacred stories, has its protections as well for doing holy things. But when the buck was killed for these evil acts, it's not happy. Its soul is not happy. So when you were able to put the stuff in the fire, you do the ceremony, you do the songs, you're able to summon the spirit of the buck and send it back to whoever killed it to do whatever it needs to do. So my brother, he told me, be ready, because those things that are out there are going to want to stop what we're doing. They don't want that spirit to run free. They don't want that spirit to go back at them. So they're going to do everything in their power to try to stop us. I said, okay. So my brother sat by the fire. He did the ceremony of having the skin go to the fire. And I remember when he was singing, doing his songs, I was vigilant. I was looking around. And in this house, they had a porch light that was pretty good, but it only went a certain distance to where you can kind of see the outline of how far the light reached. And I remember looking over to my left, and I remember seeing a dark shadow at the edge of that light, just walking back and forth. Sure enough, I look to my right, and I see it again, another one, just walking at the edge of the light like that, back and forth. I whistled to my uncle, but he was on the other side. He's like, I see him. So we pull out our swords and we stand guard for my brother to make sure nothing happens. And they got close, and as my brother was beginning to finish up the ceremony, you can hear them. They blow their whistles. They start doing their war whoops, and they were. I feel like they were about to head straight for us, make a beeline for us. But as my brother grew closer to this, releasing that spirit, you see them run. You see them take off back toward the cliff where they came from. And with that, they understood and they knew the ceremony that he was doing, and they knew that spirit was gonna come out of the buckskin. So when my brother finished up the ceremony, pop, 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 that spirit went out. And when that spirit went out, way at the distance at the cliffside, you hear a scream right afterwards. So I guess you could say the buck got his revenge for its misuse of its body, its unholy ways, unholy use of it as well. So this right here, afterwards, we ended up making our way back home, dead tired, up all night doing that. And there were some other things that we did at the time, but I can't go into it because it's fairly dark, the things that we encountered out there. But maybe, if you guys want to hear more, go into more detail about it. But I just kind of want to take this time to be able to thank you guys so much for watching. That first Skinwalker video I did is doing very well. There's a lot of new subscribers, new followers, and a very, very, very positive feedback that I'm getting from you guys for these stories and this knowledge that I have from my experiences. And I just want to say thank you guys so much, for watching, for sharing, for subscribing. And there's going to be more content on the way. So if you guys want to go follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I have the link down in the description. I post what I'm doing, any teasers for any upcoming episodes that I have. So if you guys want to go follow me there. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you guys in the next one. Aho, and I'll go on there. Never thought I'd be back here talking about Yanagloshis, but here I am. Ahoy everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shawn Shadow Productions. Now this is something that I wasn't really planning on coming back to, but there have been a lot of questions about the Truth of Skinwalkers video. And I feel that just commenting on your guys' comments is not good enough. So I'm going to do my best to try to answer the questions you have on my videos here. So buckle up everybody, and I hope you're ready for more tales of Yanagloshis. So first off, before this video actually starts and everything, I want to kind of make this clear, is I'm not trying to convince anybody that these beings are real. I'm not trying to convince hey, this is what it is, and this is how it is. You have your beliefs, and you have all these different things. I'm just trying to be here to set the record straight on stories and everything of Skinwalkers and Yanagloshis, and how it was really, I guess you could say, throwing off our culture and history of where Skinwalkers and Yanagloshis come from, and I just had to set the record straight. I know for a lot of people on the reservation that they themselves have experienced these things. They're very, very common in the Navajo Nation. Not as much as they used to be, but very common, and we have our stories and our ways with them. So I just want to start off with that. So, disclaimer everybody, that I'm not trying to convince you that Skinwalkers are real. So, the first question, are Skinwalkers and Wendigos the same? No. 100% not, no. But I mentioned before that I'm not going to go into too much detail about Wendigos because I don't know too much about it as far as for how much I know for Skinwalkers and everything. But some of the things that I do know is when it comes to Wendigos is you have to, in a sense, consume human flesh. You have to be able to eat another human being's spirit, and in a sense is a curse that falls upon you to where you become a monstrous being. Now, when it comes to becoming a skinwalker, that side is more of a voluntary kind of action that you do to learn how to get these skills, to learn how to do these things. So that's kind of like a more of a voluntary kind of thing. As far as for Wendigos, that's more of a curse that's put on you for kind of like, you don't do that, you're not supposed to be doing those things. So that's kind of a curse that those tribes, either somebody made to be able to go against pretty much people doing that stuff. But if you are one of the tribes out there that where the Wendigo originated from, I'm reaching out to you. I want to talk to you. I want to learn more so I can help share this or even help you spread the message, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of misconceptions about Wendigos out there. So the next question that was asked a lot, or not really a question, but more of a statement, was Skinwalkers do not only belong in Navajo Nation, they are all over the world kind of thing. And no, they are not. And kind of what I mean by that is a lot of people were saying that they have their beings that come from different areas and all that stuff. But yes, you do have shapeshifters in other different religions, cultures, and tribes across the world. But skinwalkers are a thing that's originated in the Navajo Nation. So when going back into the name and everything, Yanagloshi, or jump in the skins, originated from the Navajo Nation and was later adopted or translated in English to be able to say skinwalker, to kind of, get an easier translation for the English speakers that are out there. Now, I do know, like, there's a lot of people in the comments that saying there's a type of skinwalker or a witch that's in Mexico. I can't say I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Noales is what it was called or something. I butchered it. I'm so sorry. I've never heard it in person, but, I've heard a lot of people in the comments talk about those witches down there, and I'm not surprised. And there's a lot of shapeshifters throughout every single culture and every single tribe, but when it comes to naming them, skinwalker is a very specific type of shapeshifter. So it's pretty much kind of being more specific about the beings that you have. You could say, oh, there's ghosts everywhere. Yeah, that's true, but then you can talk about a soul eater, which is a very specific type, or you talk about a phantom, or you talk about a shadow being. That's where, I'm trying to be able to show you guys that there's go more in depth when it comes to the paranormal and naming these such things, because each different tribe has their different shapeshifters and they all have their names for it. So just go out there, try to talk with them, and try to learn as much as you can from them. Be a little bit more specific with those things. Another question I got was, can skinwalkers come into cities? No. Well, maybe. That's one of those things where it was kind of a touchy subject, because a lot of the skinwalkers from the Navajo Nation draw their power from the land. They draw their power from the 4 sacred mountains and the boundaries in them. So you have 2 in Colorado, 1 in New Mexico, and 1 in Arizona. So if it's not within those 4 sacred mountains in those areas, then you're probably not dealing with a skinwalker. Now, I have seen to where honestly, recently I have seen to where other tribes of shapeshifters kind of go out and do their thing. So typically, say, like, if you live on the East Coast, or you live in northern United States or Canada or Mexico, you're not dealing with a skinwalker. Could be similar, but definitely probably a shapeshifter of a different kind for sure. So another question that people were asking is, why don't I provide evidence? Why don't I provide pictures or anything from the stories that I was telling a long time ago, of events that happened a long time ago? And I'll just tell you straight up, I didn't have a camera. All that stuff happened a long time ago, and when you're working with a lot of the, I guess you could say, you're working with the medicine man, or you're working with the traditional elders or the trainers, you're not allowed to photograph that stuff. You're not allowed to document it, because when you document that stuff and you look at it, they say those teachings, if you look at, say, like that story of when we found the skin and the antlers, if you were to look on that photo, it in turn is going to get you sick. It's going to get you messed up in all sorts of different types of ways. So there's a teaching with that, is you're not supposed to take trophies, as far as for, at least in our culture, you're not supposed to take trophies of evil beings like this. Now, when it came to old-time wars and everything, I'm not too sure if Navajo scalped. I don't really think we did, but you used to take kind of battle trophies and everything from wars and all that. You used to collect things like that. Now, going to war with some human like that is totally different compared to going against evil, as far as for witching and darkness like that. So you're not really supposed to take trophies like that. If you were to take, they used to say a long time ago, when you take photos or you do all these things, you in a sense capture a moment in time of the spirit of the person you're taking a photo of. So that energy gets transferred onto those images. So when you have pictures of, the skinwalker skins, you see like the gore or anything like that has happened from these things, you're not supposed to have those. So that was kind of a teaching we grew up with, so we never thought of like, okay, let's document this to show the world in the future kind of thing. So and it kind of goes back to the first thing that I was talking about, is like, I'm not here to try to convince you that these things are real. You can believe it or not if you want to, but I know my people in the reservation, they understand and have gone through these things. Well over 300 to 400,000 people, I'm pretty sure about 70 to 80% of them have all experienced something like this growing up. So yeah, that's all I have to really say about that. So what are some darker stories that I have had or experienced? And that's something that a lot of people wanted me to kind of go into more in detail, but for me it's one of those things I don't want to go down. Again, it's those things really mess with your head when you see what they've done to children, what they do to, capture people, how they sacrifice them, and how they do these things. It's bad. I really kind of don't want to go down that route of going more in depth of the process of, how they mutilate human bodies, how they get the skins and everything, what they do to children, and how they steal people, and how they witch people and get them sick and everything. It's very, very bad. And to the core, and it's something that's really not supposed to be really shared unless it's kind of like on a need to know basis kind of thing. So really what I'm allowed to what I share on here is what I'm comfortable with. It won't really give me nightmares or bring up kind of old memories like that. So yeah, but with that, I will be able to share with you guys one more story that I have. And I know there was another story that I was supposed to tell and everything, but I was told by the elders, no, I can't tell that story, so I'm sorry, everybody. This one right here, though, is going to be one of my first ever encounters that I had with a Yannick Loshi. So, this story starts out is how every skinwalker story on the reservation starts out. So one time, I went out to my grandma's house. And when I was out there, we were out there we were building a new home. We were building a new one for all the elders and everyone in the family to come visit, for everyone to stay at when they come visit. So when we were there, we were kind of in a rush when we made our way and our plans out there. So we didn't pack enough, I guess you could say, tents or anything. And like I said, we're building a house to be able to stay in there. So I have a huge family, and when we all came out there, there's kind of limited room inside of the one house that we had there. And it was one of those things to where, like, you ran out of bed space, so I just volunteered to stay out in the truck. My uncle and I decided to stay out in the truck. And for me, I'm 6'5", and for me to sleep inside of a truck, it's a lot better than in a car. But I like to stretch out my legs and everything. So my uncle said, hey, I got an extra cot, why don't you just put it in the bed of the truck? I was like, okay. So I set up the cot, and the sun was starting to go down and everything. So I get the cot and I put it in the bed of the truck. So my uncle and I, whenever we were out there, we kind of spent some time by the fire. We talk about certain experiences that we've had in the spiritual world and certain things that we've seen, and just trying to learn as much as I can from my uncle. So as we're sitting at the fire, we have our tobacco smoke, and the sun goes down, and then the dark mist overtakes the forest where we're at. So it gets around midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and I start to get really sleepy. So that's when I make my way over to the truck. I'm like, all right, Uncle, I'll turn in and go to sleep. He's like, all right, nephew, get your rest. So when I first laid down, I remember just seeing the stars, seeing the galaxy, just how beautiful it was. And I was just like, it was nice and cool, it was not a lot of bugs or mosquitoes out or anything like that. So it was honestly really nice to be able to just turn in after a long, hard day's work and just lay down underneath the stars. It's one of the first times I've actually done it, and probably the last time I'm going to do it. So when I was sleeping, I remember hearing something behind me. So when I was laying on the cot, if you can imagine the bed of the truck, I would have to say I was eye level with the sides of the truck right next to me. And I had my back turned, I was laying on my side, and I heard some branches crack. And I sensed what felt like heat come over me, over the backside, and it was just burning. If I could explain
Hey everyone, I'm stopping the video now. I got done with it. It's an hour long, hour and 45 minutes and 20 something seconds long. Now I gotta play some cleansing music, get rid of all the negative doing those videos. So, hope y'all enjoy the sound of the video. Let it cleanse y'all of any negative energy, or any negative thoughts, or sickness from your lives.